If Wake Up Little Sparrow was a book, it would be Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon, in my opinion. I remember how impactful it was for me to hear the song for the first time. I'm curious to hear if you have any details to share with us about the song from your work with Ella.
It's a very personal song in that respect that Ella wrote it for Bernadelle, who's been her longtime manager and friend. And the song itself, it's one of those, much like Wade in the Water, that has kind of taken on a life of its own apart from the album that it's on. When it came out in 1963, the album is titled Rhythms of Childhood. Ella had really embraced making music for kids and making music for people who share music with children. Ella's not just making music for children, but she's also got the teachers, early childhood educators, elementary school teachers in mind, because those are the people who are using these records as tools in their classroom and in ways to connect and teach kids. Rhythms of Childhood comes out in 1963, and there's just a beautiful spectrum of material on this album. And Wake Up Little Sparrow is just such a lovely, delicate song. And I know that Ella published a handful of songs that she wrote on sheet music, 6, 7, 8 songs at different times in the 1960s. This was one of them that ended up being published briefly, I think, by Forrester. Beyond that, the song kind of disappears, unlike Wade in the Water, which Ailey picked up. To my knowledge, and Gayle, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Wake Up Little Sparrow doesn't really pop up again in public consciousness until Devendra Banhart records it. The early 2000s, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that this song has been attractive to contemporary singers who cross genres. Layla McCalla has a version. Liz Wright has done it. What I find interesting about it is it's a love song, but it's also like very wistful. It's got a very blues feeling to it, even though it's not technically a blues. So it's interesting to me that it's both a love song and a song that is about distance and yearning and kind of disconnection and the lonely sparrow. In addition to just, it's got this beautiful, simple melody. I don't know if its emotional complexity is why it's been so attractive to other singers.
Like many of Ella's songs, it's a great framework. It's not tour de force, but it's got great bones. You can do what you want with it, and you can interpret it in the way that you feel you want to.
Tim, I love what you just said about the song having good bones, partly because she was thinking about being as simple and accessible as she could. And also she was thinking about children with a wide range of abilities. There's a way that the songs have this sturdiness to them. And I think there's a lot of ways that her songwriting was overlooked because it's simple and because she was never doing much to show off what she could do. She was always worried about making the music feel accessible and not alienating and not distant from people, but something that people could listen to and say, I can do that, which was, of course, part of the charm of folk music. I can do that. I don't need to have special access to it. I could just pick up an instrument or I can just start singing.
She's always appreciated that kind of spirit, and that's definitely part of her goal, her ethos. I listened to the song recently. I know Ella has heard your recording of it. I haven't had a chance to listen to it with her, but I did listen to it with Bernadelle. Mm-hmm. And she really enjoyed that your interpretation of it was a completely different setting than what she was used to hearing in folk settings or rock settings or even in jazz settings. And I think she just loved that you were able to hear it and give it a whole different kind of color that came out through it. I love that you have freedom with it when you're performing. I love that you not only have you recorded it, but you're performing it live and in your programs. The fact that you're reinterpreting it every time is like right up Ella's alley. Mm-hmm. She has never done anything the same way twice.
As Gayle mentioned earlier, Layla McCalla was one of the artists who recorded Wake Up Little Sparrow, and it was her version that first introduced me to the song and to Ella in general. I was so moved by Wake Up Little Sparrow that I brought it to Cristi and our work in Tapestry, and we included it in our program that celebrates music by women composers.
Let's listen to Layla McCalla's version of Wake Up Little Sparrow.